Sometimes the people who walk away from you believe they've closed the door forever, until life gives you the key. My parents divorced when I was 7. It wasn't the quiet, mutual kind. It was the kind with shouting matches that echoed through the house, the kind where doors slammed so hard the walls shook. It was the kind of divorce where a child learns very early on that love can be incredibly fragile. After they split, neither of them seemed to really want the responsibility of raising me. I was passed around like a piece of forgotten luggage until my grandmother finally stepped in. She didn't have much money, just a small house, a tiny pension, and hands that were worn rough from years of sewing, but she had something my parents didn't. She chose me. While other kids were being picked up by their moms and dads after school, my grandma was the one waiting for me at the gate every single day, with a warm smile and a bag of her homemade cookies. She taught me how to cook, how to manage a budget, and how to find strength in prayer when things felt completely impossible. And she told me something that I have never ever forgotten. She said, "Don't beg anyone to stay. Build a life so good they'll regret leaving." When I turned 18, my parents officially cut off all contact. No calls, no birthday wishes, nothing. It was as if I had never existed, and that hurt more than I can say. But I didn't chase them. I didn't beg. Instead, I remembered my grandma's words, and I started to work. I took a part-time job while I was studying. I skipped parties to pick up extra shifts. I saved every single dollar I could. I was building myself piece by piece from the ground up. Years went by, and slowly, my life began to look full. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. By the time I was 25, I landed a solid job at a marketing firm. A year after that, I met Daniel. Daniel didn't see me as the abandoned kid. He saw my strength. He saw my independence. He saw someone who was worth loving, and he loved all of me. Last month, he proposed to me under a sky full of fairy lights in his backyard. For the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, completely whole. And then, 3 days ago, an email arrived from my father. The subject line simply read, "We need to talk." My hands were shaking as I clicked it open. He wrote about how he had made mistakes. He said he missed me. He wanted to reconnect. He went on and on about how proud he was of my success, which he must have seen on social media. He even included a recent picture of himself and my mother together at some event. But the real reason for the email was buried in the very last paragraph. He had fallen on hard times. His business had failed. They needed help, financial help. I just stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. So this was it. After years of complete silence, after they missed my graduation, after my grandma had to sell her own wedding ring just to help me pay for my tuition, they suddenly remembered they had a daughter. A wave of anger rose in my chest like a fire. Daniel found me just sitting there, frozen at the kitchen table. "What are you going to do?" he asked me gently. For a moment, I imagined just deleting the email, ignoring it, pretending it never came. But then I remembered my grandmother's words again. "Build a life so good they'll regret leaving." And I had built that life. So, I replied. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse them. Instead, I invited them to meet me at my office. They arrived dressed carefully, trying to look composed and put together. My mother couldn't even look me in the eye. My father forced a strained smile. But when they walked into that modern glass building, and they saw my name displayed right next to the company logo, I saw something shift in their faces. They hadn't expected this. I greeted them calmly and led them into a conference room. I offered them coffee. Surrounded by my success, they seemed smaller somehow, weaker. My father began his prepared speech about family and second chances and forgiveness. I just listened patiently. When he finally finished, I slid a folder across the polished table towards them. Inside were documents. It wasn't money. It was something better. It was a proposal. My company had recently launched a mentorship fund for struggling small business owners. It wasn't charity, it was structured support. It involved training, developing a strategy, and most importantly, accountability. If you truly want to rebuild, I said, my voice steady, I won't just give you money, but I can give you an opportunity. The same way my grandmother gave me one. They just stared at me, completely confused. You'll have to apply, just like everyone else, I continued. You'll have to work, just like everyone else. There are no shortcuts. My father's face flushed red. Pride and desperation were fighting a war in his eyes. So you're not helping us? My mother asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. I am, I replied, just not in the way you expected. Silence filled the room. It was thick and heavy. Finally, they both nodded. For the first time in their lives, they had to earn something from me. Over the next few months, they went through the program. They struggled, they argued, but for the first time, they also worked. And slowly, their small catering business began to recover. I didn't hover over them. I didn't chase them. I didn't beg for their love or attention. The difference this time? I had the power, and I learned that revenge wasn't about humiliation. It was about control. It was about not letting their past actions turn me into someone bitter. At my wedding 6 months later, they were there. Not as heroes of the story, not as villains, just as guests. My grandmother sat in the front row, her face beaming with pride, her smile the brightest light in the room. As I walked down the aisle toward Daniel, I realized something incredibly powerful. The best revenge isn't about hurting the people who abandoned you. It's about becoming someone they can never ignore again. I didn't answer their email with anger, I answered it with success. And that was the reply they never saw coming. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content.